flexible because most sisters do it in the morning, but some people have duties that, they may have to answer the turn or things like that, so they may do it at another time. And then then there's a work time in there, whatever duties we have. And then we have at I forgot to mention, there's mid-morning prayer, which is said privately. Now that's also from the Liturgy of the Hours. That would be like around 9 o'clock. So then we have at 11:45, we have midday prayer together, and that's Liturgy of the Hours. And then we have lunch. And after lunch, we have another work period. And then at 3 o'clock, there's mid-afternoon prayer, which is also said privately. And then at 4 o'clock, we have evening prayer, which is another Liturgy of the Hours. And then we have, after that, an hour of private prayer again. And after that, we have supper. And we do eat, as you can tell by what size of me. Then after we do the dishes, the angels don't come and do the dishes. And after the dishes, we have Office of Readings, which is also Liturgy of the Hours. And after that, we have recreation for about 35 minutes. And then after that, we have night prayer. And then the sisters can retire. So, they have some free time there to write letters or do things like that. And that's our day. So, it's full, very full.
It sounds very full.
And it's basically trying to live in the presence of God, praying always, like you see over our gate, right. Pray always. And it's an invitation to everybody because Jesus said it in the gospel, it's not just for us, it's for everybody.
For everyone, right.
So we hope that we're a symbol of that in the neighborhood. That, in fact, some have said to us, we've been a symbol in a very mobile world. We're a symbol of stability because we've always been here. And even when people were moving out of Roxbury, the neighborhood was changing, we still stayed.
Right.
And we're happy we did. And things seem to be changing again. And we never know where it's going, but we're here.
Right.
And as I said, we're happy to be here.
There was always a sense, for me personally, growing up, I lived on Woodville Street, which is right not too far from here, off of Blue Hill Ave. And my grandparents lived at 12 Moreland Street, which is also right around the corner. And I would find myself walking past here, not the front, but the backside. And there was the wall, and on each panel was the sign of the cross. And it was I would be walking with our friends, and we would be loud. But whenever we walked past the wall, we would start to whisper.
Isn't that interesting?
And there was just something that was sacred. It wasn't scary or frightening, but there was just something that was different. Even though we weren't knowledgeable of what was taking place behind the wall, there was just something, and we knew what the cross meant.
Yes.
But there was this reverence, I believe, for lack of a better word.
That's beautiful. Which says a lot about you too. That people being open to that. And being in the neighborhood, like our vocation doesn't allow us to go out and do ministry type of things, but we do what we can in accord. Like we have a piece of property adjacent to ours, and it's got its own enclosed wall around it, and it's separated from us, but it's still connected. It was given. There was a group of sisters, apostolic sisters, who wanted to work in the inner city, and they started what we call the tot lot, and they used our property where the kids could go. There was nothing for really small kids to play in the neighborhood. The playground it wasn't there at the time. And so they ran this program. And then Mrs. Daniels, who was one of our neighbors in the Blue House next to us here, she, after they couldn't do it anymore, she ran it for many, many years. And so, and you know, when we had doctor's appointments or something, and the kids would say, "Hi, sister," you know. So there was and there was a rapport in the neighborhood, you know, with us, and so that was one thing we did. And with the parish, the priests on Saturdays would come for mass with us, and on Good Friday they have a procession like the stations, and we're always one of the stations, you know. So. And then different groups have asked to come to ask us to say, well, what are we doing? What is our mission here? How long? What is it? What are we about? You know, so, and school children or young adults have come. So, in that way, you know, we're not trying to just lock ourselves in a closet and say, go away.
Right. Well, it was funny because when you were just saying that, I was thinking, it brought me back to, again, walking past here, but I don't remember walking past the front. And I don't know why. I think because the backside is closer to Moreland Street, to the park, and that's where we always used to walk. But never thought about walking on the other side, which is sort of fascinating. You mentioned about in the morning when you all rise together, and I don't know if I read this somewhere or I heard it on a musical CD, but. Are there bells that are run in the morning?
Oh yeah, we have bells. Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, we have tower bells, and depending on how big the feast is, we ring one or we ring two. It's like in syncopation together, and but we only ring those like when we have evening prayer. Basically, we really should be ringing them more. But, you know, at one point we thought there was danger of the construction that it wasn't safe to ring. But then we had that looked into, and they were safe to ring, so we went. So for many years they weren't rung. And but then we have handbells too. So and that was always part as well. The handbell was rung, and that's how we know it's time to go to prayer. You know, or sometimes it rings for lunch too, like for supper.
Now the tower bells, they're loud enough that the community can hear.
The community can hear it, but you know, the bell tower is, it used to be open. They are louvers. If you go outside, you see the louvers. But we've had glass windows put behind them. Because like birds and bats would be coming and making their homes.
Yes.
So I think it muffles the sound, but you can still hear it.
You can still hear
but
it.
Not as loud as you would if it wasn't there. And sometimes when you can go up to the bell tower, there's a marvelous view, really, when you go up there.
Wow.
The louvers sort of make you look down, but if you can sort of get above it, it's marvelous what you can see from up there, because we are on top of Mount Pleasant Avenue.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
You know, so it's,
exactly.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Beautiful view.
When you were ringing the bells, I have to go back to the bells for a second. You made the motion of pulling a rope.
Yes,
And
we
that's
pull
what you
ropes. That's what we do. Yeah, and the bells are now. See, I didn't look up that information, but the bells they're engraved. So they're in memory. One is in memory of the angels, and one is in memory of Mary. You know, the Virgin Mary, and they weigh tons. I mean, they're, you know, as you must know from being in a church, you know how big they are, and
Beautiful they are too.
So they are beautiful, and they're a reminder of people to pray.
Yes.
You know, so and like we ring them, like when the New Year comes in, we ring them at midnight. So just we don't know if people are up or not, but
you do it anyway.
We do it.
I think those are important parts of ministry. Those are an important part of worship, celebration.
Right.
That
yes.
for the longest time in the past were always done. And then the new generation is growing up not realizing the significance and the importance. I grew up at People's Baptist Church, which is located on Camden Street in the South End. And my father, he would, during funerals and for the morning service, ring the bell to let people know it's time to come to the service. And then he got a little older, and my older brother did it, then passed it on to me. And for funerals, the same thing. For weddings, the same thing. And it wasn't until years later that it just stopped. People just stopped doing it. And I went up and looked and found that this one bell was made by Paul Revere.
Isn't that amazing?
In doing research, found out that there were certain Paul Revere bells that he manufactured and that were in different locations throughout New England, and
Yes.
People's Baptist Church has one. To this day, it's not rung anymore. It's still not rung.
Oh, isn't that too bad?
And that whole history
Yes.
is now getting lost because it's not being heard.
Yes, yes.
And I'm thrilled to hear that the ringing still takes
Yes, yes, it still
place,
takes place.
because it is important.
Yeah, yeah.
And without it, it's not lost, but it's another piece of history that's missing.
Right, yeah, we have a message to give.
Exactly.
You know, and bells are one way
Doing that.
of saying it, you know. Like another thing we sort of do, and we've started this more recently, is our front entrance, we'll put something out there. Like you'll see our banner that's up
Yes,
there
it's on
now.
the banner.
And at Christmas, we'll have a manger scene out there. At Easter, we have a figure of you know, our Lord, you know, and He is risen, you know, over.
Right.
So it's you know, say a word, but and people, you know, they can see it or not see it, like it or not like it, you know, but it's there. Just saying a word, you know, to give them hope and give them joy,
Right.
you know, whatever, you know. So that's, you know, so these are little ways that we find to, you know, say something to the people and our neighbors, you know. So, I guess, you know, our organ, you asked about the architecture, and
Right.
I'm not an architect. I can tell you about the organ. There are very few of them left. Hutchings and Vody, there are
Yes.
only about 3 or 4
Exactly.
left that are still in existence. And in 1990, we had a friend who, you know, worked on it and, you know, revamped it so it could be used. And unfortunately, you know, we don't have many people coming to, you know, liturgy with us and Mass with us. So we have public ceremonies, like for, you know, some of our big feasts, for Our Lady of Mount Carmel, for example, or St. Therese. We have public masses, or when one of the sisters makes a solemn profession. And then, you know, we haven't even used it then because it's hard to play. You have to sort of be an Amazon to get those things to go down, you know. So, so we haven't used it really recently. So, in fact, it's something that really has to be kept up because,
It does.
you know.
It does.
Do you play the organ?
Yes.
If you need to practice sometime,
Because I think the first time I came in and I looked and went, oh, it's a pipe organ, and was fascinated. I said, well, that would be one of the questions that
that you would ask.
because Hook and Hastings was one of another company that was here that had these wonderful organs that after years, if you're not taking care of them,
They go.
they go, and finding parts to them is just
Oh,
virtually
yeah.
impossible.
And you know what's interesting, where the motor is for this
Yes.
organ, you have to go out in the garden, and we actually, it used to be a little window that you had to sort of go into to go down this little stairway. It's quite an enterprise,
Wow.
you know, to get in there and do it. But since we've had these cellar doors, we put it for safety and the rest, you know. And so but it's still, you still
You
have to
still
go down this
have-
little stairway and go down and oil the motor sometime, or we've had to rewire the motor as well. So, so it's a very interesting little, you know, why it's connected out there.
Who
You
knows?
know, yeah,
Wow.
it was, you know, probably the only way they could, you know, do it. So, but anyway,
Were you able to find, speaking about the windows and the organ, were you able to find the cornerstone?
the cornerstone. Yes, I did jot down some things about the cornerstone. It was one of the things when they did one of the fundraising. Mother Beatrix, who was one of the foundresses, she promised that their names would be in the cornerstone, those who contributed, and they are. It was Archbishop Williams laid the cornerstone, and he did it with a silver trowel, which we still have as a little memento. And also in there is a stone from Mount Carmel in the Holy Land, and there were the Catholic paper and the daily paper is in there. I guess the day that they actually did it. Trying to think what else was in there. I think that, the names of the clergy who were there, who officiated at the ceremony. Let me see, I did jot something down. Let me see if I can find where I put it. And so in case I'm forgetting anything, here it is. Some coins. I don't know what, they didn't say specifically what the coins were about, whether they were the coins of the time,
Yeah,
or,
maybe the coins.
so a few of those were in there. And the history of our order is in there. And there was a parchment containing the names of the subscribers to the building fund. So that's what's in there. So, which is nice to know.
It is.
I just found that out
Yeah.
too.
Is it on the property where you can actually see, where you see
You
it?
go in the front. It's right
right
in
in
the
front.
corner. Right
What
there.
happened, going back again to one other comment of People's Baptist Church, they did a cornerstone, but they made it in the form of a plaque. And they put it on the wall in the front entrance of the church. This was way before I was born. And someone decided that they needed to repanel the front entrance, and they paneled over it.
Oh, I see it.
So for the longest time, I would walk into the church and see a wall and a table, and that was it. Years later, the new minister came and said, well, we need to renovate the front hall. So we need to take the wall down, and they took the wall down and found this huge cornerstone that talked about the history of the church and everything back in the 1800s.
Wow.
And I've always been intrigued by uncovering history like that, where someone doesn't think it's important and covers it up, or someone doesn't think it's important anymore, so they don't ring it anymore. Or someone doesn't think this is important, so we don't write about it anymore. But yet it is so important, and you miss out on a great work
Yes.
that was started
Yeah.
because someone decided that it's not important anymore. And
Yeah, I think like even for liturgy, for our worship, the past, the present, and the future are so important.
Yep.
If we don't remember the past, we're like floating on air.
exactly,
And you can't build on air
no.
unless you're a spaceship.
No,
Whatever they do.
And even then,
You need something, right?
You need
Yes.
something.
It's gravity up there, whatever keeps
Exactly.
it there. So,
exactly.
yeah, that's so true. That's so cool. Well, let me just say one thing maybe about our being here. I think, a lot of people don't think prayer is important, and that's what we're about. And for St. Teresa, who, founded the Reform, prayer was everything. It's like we couldn't get anything without prayer, and we don't think of that. I think in some ways, science is finding that out. They've discovered that people who are prayed for, who are sick, do better than people who aren't. So, we're, as a culture, we're doers, and that's fine. But I think we are not complete unless we forget the being part of our being, of who we are, of what God made us.
Right.
And I think maybe we forget that in the Gospels, Jesus prayed. I mean, he ministered 3 years, and he was here for 33 about, which is amazing. I mean, the Son of God, and really, that's all. I mean, he decided just to live quietly.
Right.
I mean, it should say, I think we have a lot to discover